Hello and welcome to 100% Real with Brandon and Ruby. We're calling this the ADHD Chronicles of what it takes to build not only your best body, but the confidence that you've been craving your whole life. Because confidence doesn't just come from what your body looks like, it comes from the process there. It comes from the strength that we build there, the confidence we build in ourselves that we can get to this end physique and get to this place that allows us to live life to the capacity that we want to live life. Because you're not going to feel good when you're low on energy all the time, when you're second guessing everything, when you're putting in so much effort to only realize there's nothing coming out on the other end. There are many of us, many of you who probably have experienced years and years of training and still wondering why your body doesn't look like it works out as it does, or it doesn't look like you put in the effort that you do to actually care about your health and fitness. Brandon is talking now about the best ways to, well, not the best ways, but many times we try to throw so much at something in order to get more results out of it. Like, I'm not seeing my glutes grow. I'm not seeing my legs grow. I have to add in more exercises, or maybe I need to add in this extra glute day or split up my glutes and quads. How would you approach that?
One of the things that I tell people who do that is like, listen, if one set isn't enough to trigger at least something, two won't do it either. So if you're just piling a bunch of stuff on there, like check your quality of effort, check your quality of execution. Kind of where I was going earlier is like, I'll give people two exercises to just master. And something that I see 100% of the time. You're looking for numbers as if like 12 reps is some magical thing that once you do 11, nothing happens. And once you do 12, like, oh, that was a stimulus, even though there was no weight on the bar. Like, okay, I'll let you start there. And I don't need to be right. I just need to be effective. So I'll let you be right. I'll let you do what you like to do. But next week, you're going up. And the next week, and the next week, and the next week. And eventually, you're going to do what I want you to do, which is work your ass on, not off.
Yeah, that's the thing. So many women feel like if something isn't growing, the only way to solve that is to chuck in more volume, to throw more reps at it, to throw more sets at it.
Yeah.
Where in fact it's like, okay, why don't we actually look at what you're doing and improve the effectiveness and quality of that? But something you said there as well is if in 6 months you're doing more weight or more reps, you definitely grew muscle. But
Mhm.
you were probably sandbagging because you were learning how to lift or you were like fluffing and foo-fooing about. So
Well,
maybe you did, maybe you didn't. You can be sure that you will if in another 6 months' time that trajectory stays the same. That's what I loved with what you said.
that and another thing to consider is like training age. If with a young training age, you don't have to be anywhere near failure to see some hypertrophy. So like these people who are doing all these things, I would say they have a young training age, and anything more than what they're doing will probably trigger some more growth, even if we pull the volume down. Like, okay, you've been using whatever, you've been squatting, 65 pounds or whatever. All right, do 70, but do the same thing you did last week with 70 pounds. That's probably enough to trigger growth because if you're squatting 70 pounds, you're not an advanced lifter. So you're going to grow really, really easy. Those newbie gains come so easy. So you don't have to push them very hard. I kind of split clients up into levels. Like level one is like, is pizza healthy? What's a barbell? Right? Level two is I've been with you for a year. In other words, they've been working with me for a year or two, and they're pretty close to like, we're out of the newbie gain stage. So, okay, we have to actually think about this kind of stuff. And level three is you don't need me. We're just hanging out because you for some reason like to. But like level three is like a C bum kind of person. That's not my clientele at all. But that's someone who is self motivated, who knows what they're doing, who has already reached an elite level. We're not worried about level threes. That's not who we're talking to. We're probably talking more to level ones who think they're level twos, who think they need to train like a level three, but who don't actually understand how a level three got where they are and how they train. So I would say you don't have to, well, we know you don't have to be anywhere close to failure for a level one newbie person. You have to be close to failure for a level two person. So that again is where like the program kind of takes care of it for me. We're just going to make the weight go higher, make the technique improve. I often cite I give people single leg deadlifts. You can call them single leg RDLs. I just call them single leg deadlifts. And I give them rear foot elevated split squats. And I don't care if their shin is vertical or if it goes forward. I don't care. Sometimes just to make them think they're doing something different, I will make it a little more hip dominant or more knee dominant, right? Or if I already have like a knee dominant movement, I'll make it more hip dominant, whatever. But I'll give them those
Oh,
two.
that point right there, just because of what you said. If I already have a hip dominant movement, then I'll make it more knee dominant. I think this is where a lot of people go wrong with their programming,
Yeah, they don't
in
balance.
that there is so much redundancy because they keep wanting to hit their glutes. But there is a trade-off. Something that you said as well before is that every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something.
Mhm.
And in saying yes to more and more hinge based stuff or vertical based stuff, you're saying no to a lot of quad stuff. And at one point, there is going to be a weak link that's going to stop your hamstrings from going, that's going to stop your glutes from going. And it's most likely the fact that you haven't strengthened your quads. So now your hips shoot up every single time that you squat, or you can't get in full mobility because you've never trained in the full range of motion to start with. So now
Yeah.
you're weak in those ranges, which bottlenecks your strength in other ranges.
If you can, single leg deadlift more than your body weight for a set of 8, and you can rear foot elevated split squat more than your body weight for a set of 10 to 20, you have glutes, you have quads, you have hamstrings, like you have all of the above. So now the caveat is you do those well. That means your rear foot elevated split squat, you're taking that to end range. You're maybe standing on a box as well and touching your knee to the floor. So you're getting a deep stretch at the bottom. The single leg deadlift, same thing. You're getting a deep stretch. Specifically, I always try to target the hip. The hamstrings tend to take care of themselves there. I think probably the biggest issue that people have is they think it requires complication and they tend to overcomplicate things. But the reality is, like, the only people who need to add in very specialty like exercises are people who are like just mass monsters who are already so far beyond where any of us ever actually want to be that it's ridiculous that they're putting on more. For everyone else, for us, simplicity is king. If you can do 10 chin-ups, I guarantee your arms and your back look phenomenal. There's no way around it. If you are a woman who can bench press more than your body weight for a set of 5 to 10, I guarantee the other side of your upper body looks great and you've got good arms. If you can single leg squat, if you can do pistol squats for a set of 20, and I mean a deep, like all the way down pistol squat, your legs look awesome. At least the front side of them does, and the glutes as well, because that is you don't think it, but that is a very glute heavy exercise. And then if you can single leg
Yeah.
deadlift, like I said earlier, more than your body weight for a set of 8, yeah, you've got glutes, you've got hamstrings, you're very strong.
And I feel like this is something that confuses many women, sadly, because this is exactly what's marketed to all of us. So this isn't your fault. But when we want to look a certain way, what's been marketed to us is you need to cut your carbs. It's all about dieting. It's all about weight loss, weight loss, weight loss. But no matter what you do, even if you have the most pristine diet in the world, none of that is going to build the physique that you want because it's muscle that shapes, it's muscle that tones, it's muscle that builds, it's muscle that's going to give you not only the look that you want, but the metabolism that allows you to eat more carbs and more calories without fear because that muscle enables you to move around with more energy because it demands energy. You're using that energy, and the more that you use the energy, the more that you're able to supply that energy. So if you're feeling like this is so hard for you, there's so much for you to put your effort into, it's probably because what you've been seeing on your social media feed has been everything that's volume based. You have to do this, you have to do that, you need to start here. It's 5 days a week of workouts, where I would argue that people that say that they're training 5 or 6 days a week, but they're not seeing results, they would benefit from doing a shit ton less, but really going hard into the quality of that and fixing everything else around it. Because in my
Yep.
experience, those that do work out that much, they put more effort into the working out, but they don't look at the diet side of things or the movement outside of the gym. And you're not actually like the training is hard, but it's only hard because it's set up in an ineffective manner that makes it just feel productive because it feels like it's burning you out. Like there was before I clicked record, I was talking about this lady who posted on the forum saying that she is too burnt out to train her legs because by the time she finishes the glute portion of her lower body workout, she's fried. And this is where I would question, do you actually know how to structure together an effective lower day program? Because you don't really need glute specific workouts to grow your glutes, but you can make things a little bit more glute dominant if you want to. However, like we were saying right before this is where that redundancy comes in. Because if you're slacking from one area, it's going to become your bottleneck. And you mentioned there as well. This is now what I'm coming up with as a blueprint that I want to put out, because you have your TGFU method. I'm coming out with this Ruby Recomp roadmap. It's figuring out, what is this roadmap? What is it that's actually going to get you to the end of where you want to be? And this is why Brandon and I are doing this podcast. This is why we're going to have this series coming out to you, because we are on the same page. We base everything that we do off the principles that have been proven to work. It's just applied to different populations, it's applied in different ways in that sense, different target audiences. When women come to me, if I see that you can't do anything close to a push-up, you can't even squat with a bar, you can't squat to depth, you probably never even filmed yourself doing any of your lifts, they feel good. But then when you see what your split squats look like or your hinges look like, they're not up to par. Well, how do you expect to build this physique you want when that hasn't been addressed yet? Because it's the training in an effective manner with good technique that is going to allow you to actually apply now the intensity to then drive that further without there being bottlenecks like back injuries, knee injuries, wobbly this, wobbly that. And it's a pet peeve, especially when I see amazing coaches and amazing trainers share things from their clients. They're doing hinges and squats in runners that have a curve as round as anything. And I'm like, why have you not told them to take their shoes off? I cannot watch this filmage. I don't know whether it's a pet peeve for you as well, but I can't see people doing anything deadlifty or squatty in shoes. It's just a recipe for disaster. But how can you expect to squat with that? But if your strength standard isn't there, like you're not benching a certain, like what you said, benching your body weight is freaking amazing. Why don't we get you working to these strength standards? Because then you're going to be in a better place to effectively lose fat. Your metabolism is going to be roaring. You're going to be in a place to maintain muscle, to burn more. And in this whole process, you now have something to drive you forwards so that you don't sabotage yourself when you diet. You don't mind coming out of it into maintenance because you have something to focus on versus being either on a diet or completely off the rails and just eating more food. That is the roadmap to your best physique. It's very hard to travel that without a GPS. It's very hard to travel that without any signs on the road to know that you're going in the right direction. Now, while Brandon and I can't be your GPSs through this podcast, this is here to serve you as as little marks along the road to make sure that you are going in the right direction. You may still take detours because there might be too many confusing signs that look the same, but that's okay. You just reroute and get yourself on the road. And if you want to make it any faster, well, if you're living in Texas,
Oh yeah, we're in San Angelo. We're like kind of middle of nowhere, sort of.
well, if you're living in San Angelo and lifting only gives you pain and you don't really know where to look, then you have your GPS there. And if you're living anywhere else around the world, you have your GPS here. And if you actually are one of my clients, or if you're anyone that follows me and you do live in the San Angelo area, give Brandon a visit. And I really hope you do enjoy this series. So anyway, I'm throwing that back off to you. Wouldn't you agree that if people could prioritize strength and make that their obsession versus the calories they're burning or their types of food that they're eating to the nth degree, where now you're arguing over brown rice or white rice, or if this product or ingredient that Dr. Atlas on Instagram told you is toxic. If we put all of that focus and stress, even from the scale, if we let go of the scale completely and just focus all in on strength and getting stronger, and maneuvering our diet over time to somewhat of something that facilitates feeling good, Because if you have a shitty diet, your training performance isn't going to be there. It's going to keep flip-flopping. You're going to feel like you're making no progress and spin in circles anyway. So your nutrition has to be at least good enough to get your training there. So once all your focus is on feeling good, fueling well, and making training the best that it can be, isn't it going to be inevitable that the women that come to us are going to see their physiques change?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like what I was saying earlier is like it tends to get overcomplicated on the surface and they tend to focus on like majoring in the minors. I like to say like you're mowing the lawn while the house is on fire. Seed oils versus brown or white rice or things like that, or this glute exercise versus that glute exercise. And really, like I think it was Kobe Bryant said, "I'm the best because I never got bored with the basics." That's a paraphrasing, but that's what he said. That's the essence of what he said. And it's true. Like your meat and potatoes is like your big compound lifts. If you get really strong, I'm very biased towards single leg training, not against bilateral training. But in terms of a complete development for the lower body, you can't do single leg training without all of those muscles firing in the right sequence at the right time in conjunction with each other in such a way that they develop in a very balanced way and a symmetrical and proportional way. And so for physique, I came out of kind of a more orthopedic friendly school, if you will. And I saw that it turns out that's also very physique friendly because if the joint works better and it works better in conjunction with the joints around it, then the muscles that act on those joints develop better and they don't require as many damn sets and they don't require as much volume because you got the quality of work in. And so, like, yeah, coming back to the strength idea, if you made your obsession strength and strength as a skill, I'm not just going to move more weight, I'm going to establish a baseline technique and try to improve that as I see the weights go up. And this is why I said earlier is like start light, that's fine. Just make sure the numbers are climbing every week. So give yourself somewhere to go. You don't want to not develop good habits and jump right in and, push to the point that you are just ingraining the habit of like benching like this instead of doing it, well. We want to work the muscles we're trying to target and not the, connective tissue in the joints per se. We're not it's not cartilage day.
You mentioned that you like the single leg work, and I'm a huge fan of this. You mentioned that if you're building up the single leg work, then that is going to pay off because it's humbling. There's no way that you can like screw up a single leg exercise if you're actually filming the lift, etc.
Yeah.
Versus with the bilateral, there is that. And I would say, would you also bring dumbbells over barbells into this as well? Because there's that. But then also on the single leg and single limb side of things, I would say a lot of women stray away from that because they feel weak. They feel like they can't lift enough weight. Can lift more with barbell or a machine. Why would I want to go to single limb work?
I would say that's your green flag that you can't lift more weight on that movement. That means that you've found the weakness because that's what you're trying to bring up. If you hide your weaknesses, you can't work on them. So if it's bringing out a weakness in the chain, you're just going to get that much more out of it. That's good news. If this is really hard and you have to reduce the weight a lot to do it this way, that's a green flag that you're probably on the right track. I often say to people who are new to training, like, hey, if this feels right, you're probably doing it wrong. And if it feels wrong, then you're learning something new more often than not. That's with the caveat that that's under the watchful eye of one of our coaches. But it is true because if you're doing it and it feels right, you're just doing what you've already done, which isn't what we're trying to teach you because if that worked, you wouldn't be here. So it's going to feel wrong when you get it right because it's a pattern you haven't practiced before or it's a range of motion you haven't really been in before. It's going to be uncomfortable. So coming back to making strength the obsession and strength as a skill your obsession and honing in on those weak points, especially single leg stuff. If you'll remind me to go into the bilateral deficit later, I do love talking about that. But yeah, and you'll find that it benefits your bilateral movements better. If you can do pistol squats, you're going to be a lot better at back squats, and you're going to get a lot more out of them.
The pistol squats. If you don't believe that this is, I don't know, were you following me back in 2020? Were you like in my world back in 2019?
I think I was just
2019,
about to start following you there. I think I found you in 21.
My squats were shit. No, they were shit. In lockdowns, my coach gave me pistol squats. I don't even think I can do pistol squats now. I should start practicing that again. I used to pistol squat my dogs. You won't follow me then, were you?
No, I don't think so.
No? Oh my God. I have to find it and tag you. I was carrying like Kiara, who's 12 kilos or whatever, carrying her and doing pistol squats easily.
Yeah, that's the way.
Easily. By the time I got back into the gym, my squats never were deeper. They were never as clean. They were
Mhm.
never as strong, and pistol squats tidied them up. I just
Yeah.
had to give a big example of why that's true.
Yeah. I mean, there are movements that tune the joints to work together. And I'm a huge proponent of like form follows function. Like, yes, we can train you like bits and pieces here, but I mean, in reality, like if you ever get a chance to see a cadaver, go see a cadaver because what you'll see is you don't have 600 plus muscles. You have one muscle with like 600 plus articulation. And Thomas Myers said that, but it's so true. Like if you actually look at a body, it's all one piece. And so it fires with one. Like if you flex a bicep, there are a lot of other things that are happening, right? My triceps are firing to stabilize the elbow from the other side. My rotator cuff is firing to put me in one position and hold me there. And we're back.
I'm hoping that you guys don't even notice there was a glitch. There are a lot of times that we start with a coach or we start a new program, a new anything with a whole burst of energy, and we want to get it right, of course. But it's kind of where this single leg work, this learning the skills, this is why most people try to obsess over the nuances, or it's so easy to get caught up in fancy exercises or the best glute workout on Instagram, because it takes a lot of patience and humbling and being okay with starting to learn things, to relearn things, to scale back the weight and be okay with that in order to set you up for the success that you want to see long term instead of always coming across bottlenecks. And a part of this in the book that talks about resistance, it's considered resistant from the therapist. I always just saw it as someone is struggling and they can't break through. The resistance I find isn't between well, to me, I don't feel like it's a therapist client or a coach client thing. I feel like all the resistance resides in the client themselves. They want something so bad, but it's your own internal struggles. But in reality, you mentioned this, I don't know whether I hit record, but I feel like this is a powerful part. It's not always to do with the thing itself, but the things that are getting in your way to that thing, things that we might fear away from. Like we don't like what accepting the solution is going to entail in terms of it might make you look weaker. It might mean that now people are seeing you as like this strong person, and now you have to scale back the weight. And the hardest part here with people letting go of the dieting mentality is that this is why it's so detrimental to compliment people on like losing weight and like body stuff, because now you become attached to that identity. It's so hard to move away from that. It increases your fear of eating more food. It increases your fear of actually doing the things that now are going to set you up for long-term success, because you don't continue, which might be the next episode, talking into this part, you don't continue eating the same way or doing the same things that you did towards the end of a diet moving forwards to then maintain those results. That's why you end up with this 1600 calorie quote unquote maintenance that isn't truly maintenance. But the part I was trying to get to in this, clients only have so much energy to focus on the difficult struggles before them. So if you try to manage too much too soon, you are going to burn yourself out and not have the amount of energy needed there to be able to come up against any struggles and be able to go through them, to be able to manage these particular habits, because that one habit isn't just one habit. Break it down into all the different things. And it's not just doing all those different things that are part of that habit. It's all the other things that now you have to also fight from going back to. And part of the podcast I was listening to right before this was along the lines of you can't just remove particular things. I love Stan Efferding. He's finally caught up with science and literature because science and literature has finally come out. It's like people already know this stuff, but people don't accept it until science and literature comes up with it. And now he's finally really emphasizing that saturated fats need to go, butter needs to go. We need to keep like everything down to 10% of your calories when it comes to saturated fats, if you want that like healthy kind of thing. Anyway, if you need to keep things out of the house, that is a really good thing for you to do. And funny enough, I had this conversation with a client factoring into the bilateral discrepancies, because I think they kind of relate. It's like, it's really hard for you to master the compound,
The various parts involved.
Yeah, the various parts involved. This particular client is on her first fat loss phase with me after not being in one for over a year. And I'm like, okay, we'll finally cut your calories and go into an effective deficit. And she was doing really well. And now all of a sudden, these little nibbles and snacks are coming in. It's so important to know your starting base and work within those constraints, because as soon as you try to fit your body to everyone else's everyone else's body, or my squat needs to look this particular way. Well, actually, no, because your femurs are as long as a giraffe's leg. With this particular client, she was trying to make her protein mug cake more palatable. So she wanted to add in some chopped chips and some cream. And this is where it comes in. If you can't have those foods in the house without you overeating them, or you can't have highly palatable foods or sweet foods around, and you need to have a big fat no on it, that is okay. And in this conversation, I opened up about my side of things as well, which is typically where a lot of women don't have that exposure because they just see what's promoted online. She said, every once in a while, I seem to think I can bring certain things back into our house, but it always backfires. And what I said is, there's nothing wrong with you needing rules. You just need to accept that you function that way, but reframe it away from restriction to knowing yourself, and realize there's still plenty of foods that you can love. And it's not that it's obsessive or disordered eating like people make us feel. And then we tend to think that we're the problem, because these people speaking in certain tones to you that are body image disordered eating specialist guru monkeys just make you feel more guilty, which only makes it worse for you. Something that is infiltrating everywhere, that is stopping people from getting to where they want to be because they're shamed for needing things a certain way, or they can only see it in that way because people talk down to them like, you're bad for needing to keep this food out of your house.
It's self-control by proxy, for one. Like, it's you understanding that you're human, you're mammalian, you have things that are built into you. These foods are designed to make you want more. That doesn't make them evil foods or bad. It just means, like, yeah, if you put them in your house, you're going to eat them because they were designed to make you want to eat them. You don't have as much direct self-control as you'd like to. You have self-control by proxy. So you have control over your environment, and your environment has a great deal of influence, almost to the degree of control over you. But again, you have a lot of control over your environment. So you just take self-control out of the equation. Like, that decision fatigue and self-control, it's fatiguing, it's tiring. And, once it's out, yeah, you're tired. You're probably going to get a case of like, well, screw it, I'm going to eat. So take that out of the equation and just don't make it an option, and things work. And that's okay. That's not disordered eating. Disordered eating is sitting down with the entire bag of chips and eating the whole thing at once. That's disordered eating. Like, that's a problem. And that requires a different, that requires some self-work. Coming back to the single leg thing, these two, if you take one leg off the floor, a lot of muscles now have to fire in a different sequence that they wouldn't otherwise have to fire. You are removing the training wheels, so to speak. You're decreasing the stability that's provided externally and demanding stability on that one leg. When that one leg acquires enough skill to stabilize and be strong simultaneously, I always love this argument of like, more stability means more muscle growth. And yes, that's true. So why not develop it internally? Why not become more stable from the inside out instead of relying constantly on external stabilizers, holding onto the rack while you do things? That's fine while you learn, but if you can just do a true pistol squat and load it, I guarantee your back squats are going to give you more, because again, the muscles are sequencing better, they're firing better, you're moving better, and if you're moving better, you're getting better results, period. Form follows function. So man, yeah, those are two, they're disparate but connected in the sense that, like,
form follows function. How can that relate to diet? Because they are related. I was going to go off on my tangent, but I know that you can relate it the same way because with the same minds.
Yeah, I'm going to let you take that one. Actually, I want to hear your thoughts.
Form versus function. And this is the thing, like, it's very hard to eat in a way that truly can optimize our training. Instead of You said, oh my goodness. Right before this conversation, I sent Brandon this post that is extremely valuable for people wanting to enhance their physique, where so many times we delay carbs, as an example, because we want to like macro hoard or anything to do with that. Like optimizing your workout window is something that is extremely beneficial if you really care about taking your physique to the next level. So the function of the food first is there for you to actually have some form of stability. It's there for you to feel good eating without sabotaging, because it's very hard for you to then optimize the form of how you're eating. If you haven't yet got some form of stability in the bare basics of food, you're still finding it really hard to not overeat, to not binge. And this can even go into dieting, where it's very difficult for you to have even more restrictions on yourself in dieting when you can't even trust yourself to not overeat. This is what we are hoping to help you with through this. Every single episode is going to have its own little theme. I'll let you take it now.
Yeah, I think we were talking about, like, I actually had this conversation earlier with the whole, carbs and not eating carbs before their workout 3 times today, actually telling people, like, you absolutely, like, I recommend you eat some carbs first. I try to be gentle with my language. You need to, you must, you have to, like, I try to be gentle, especially in person. But I related it to, it's the same as saying, well, I'm just, I'm only going to fill my gas tank up halfway before I take my road trip. Like, it's not going to work out great if you do that. And, coming back to just the more literal translation of it is, like, if you're not eating enough carbs to fuel your workouts, then you're leaving the actually stimulative reps on the table. Those last few reps that actually trigger muscle growth, you're not going to get to them because you didn't have enough gas to go far enough in the set to do them. Eat. Don't be afraid of food.
Yeah. Remember how you said this before as well. I want you to tie into this, where we were talking about so many times we throw more and more at something if it's not responding.
Mm-hmm.
Where, yeah, okay, you might feel like your training is building muscle. Yeah, you might feel like your training is effective. Your training is hard. Your training should get you to your end results. But is it really? Like, it can feel really hard, but of course it'll feel hard if you went into the session without enough
depleted
fuel to actually, like, when it comes to effective reps and people saying that you want your last reps to slow down, you want to struggle, you want to fail your last reps, so to speak. Well, you can easily do that when you're not well fueled, but still never actually build muscle, because of the fact that although you failed, although you had the effective reps, there's a bottleneck because you aren't pushing to your true potential. And it got debunked recently. I'm going to let you take this just because I want to talk about the strength part. It doesn't matter what rep range you're doing, whether you're doing 5 reps or 10 reps or 12 reps, every single muscle fiber needs glycogen to fuel. The only reason that this wasn't really spoken about before is because in the research, it was always said that, oh, but you don't really deplete that much glycogen in your workouts. Well, that's because they're not actually looking at the cellular microfibril level. Like, yes, you don't deplete that much from other areas, but we don't care about the other areas. They aren't the ones that are lifting the weight. What does get depleted is the muscle-specific glycogen. If it isn't well stocked up, which isn't just what you have before your workout, it's throughout the whole day.
Yeah, I get on to clients frequently, especially new ones, when they come in and they're like, yeah, I didn't eat today. Like, okay, well, here's some gummy bears and a protein shake. You're going to get something because, yeah, you're going to deplete that glycogen locally. Yeah, maybe not systemically, locally for sure. And man, you'll just feel better. There are other things that happen. Like when your phone is at like 12% battery, it still works pretty much the same as it did at 80%. It just won't work for very long. But you start getting closer to like 5 or 6, things start to kind of mess up. I don't know about your phone, mine does. My laptop will slow down, right? It'll just start going into kind of hibernation, not hibernation mode, but it'll go into like power save mode, which means the processor is going to downclock the processor. It's going to run slower. Your body is really, really similar. It's smart. It says, hey, we're below this threshold. We're not empty. We're below this threshold. We're going to down regulate some very important processes to your growth because we're just trying to not die, right? Going into a deep deficit by fasting and trying to not eat before your workout is, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I see where people are coming from with this. We have the intention of making progress here, but it's too much, too fast, too soon, and it's extremes. And my red flag is extremes. If I see, you know, for me, if someone is giving someone advice and it's a very extreme advice, like, oh, you should only eat between the hours of this and this, that's a red flag. This person doesn't really understand the processes or hasn't done this for long enough to see how hard that fails in the long run, right? The green flag is when the advice sounds too simple. I'll use an example. There was a program I did many years ago by a guy named Dan John. He's a he's a world-renowned strength coach. Yeah. I did his Mass Made Simple program, which has you training once every 3 days, and you're doing pretty much the same movements. You bench, you overhead press, you row, you do a little complex, and then you squat. And the program has you working up to, for me, it was working up to a single set of back squats, 225 for 50 reps. I've done some complicated programs, and I've done programs that are simple like that one. And that program was so much more effective than the more complicated programs I've done. If I give you 10 different exercises, it's really not going to push you nearly the same as if I said, hey, here's a heavy weight, squat it 50 times without stopping. That's really simple. It's also really, really hard. So the thing that people do is they confuse complexity with difficulty and efficacy. But the reality is, simpler is generally better and more effective, and it's a whole lot harder. Keep the nutrition simple. I like to tell people to get, at least 3, but preferably more protein intakes per day. Like 4 is better, right? But just get an eating schedule that's regular. Eat before your workouts, and get a protein at every time you eat. Get a carbohydrate every time you eat. Get a vegetable about this much every time you eat. Maybe that much fat. Keep the saturated fats on the low side. Let's keep it real simple. If you're a higher level person, you're probably not looking to us for advice. Like if you're someone who is a competitive bodybuilder already and you've got your pro card, you're not asking us for help. The people who need us, I think, are the people who aren't quite sure and tend to think that that complicated mess is what's necessary. But I'll tell you what I haven't seen, behind when I talk to my friends who are bodybuilders, when I myself did it, I haven't seen them use intermittent fasting successfully to prep for a show. I don't think I've seen anyone just do that, period. Only seen 1 or 2 like keto their way to a show and they didn't do great and they were on drugs.
That's the thing with all of this. It's just like people just throw things at you that make things look like it's the way because it looks like it's hard. And we have been brought up to believe that if it's not hard, it's not working. When something's actually working, it feels too simple. Sometimes it feels too slow. And we tend to then screw ourselves over by overcomplicating the process and by adding more complexity to something that's already working. Because if it's too simple, it mustn't work. If it feels too easy, it mustn't work. But I feel like something very powerful for you guys to do is to reflect on your past attempts. Reflect on what it is that you've tried, what it is that you feel has set you back every single time. I don't think anyone has ever come to me once saying, oh my God, I feel amazing. Everything is the best it could ever be in the world, Ruby, because I'm such a perfectionist, because everything is so complicated that I have to overthink everything, every decision I make.
Yeah, you guys, perfection is the enemy of progress.
And you guys live busy lives. The more simple that you can make something, the more predictable that you can make something. I hate saying this because it sounds woo-woo, and I'm going to caveat it with that every single time because I cringe when I see it online, but it is so very much true. If your body doesn't feel safe, it's not going to build muscle and it's not going to lose fat. But when I say feel safe, how can it feel safe if it only knows restriction, if it only knows overworking, under recovering? And what I mean by that is your hormones aren't just your sex hormones. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. Your brain is the command center. If restriction is all it knows, it's going to feel like it's in famine. So your appetite signals get dysregulated. Your thyroid drops. And even if you're having these overfeeding periods, all those other hormones in your body. We're not talking about cortisol, even though cortisol does play a role in this part as well. But this isn't the hormones that people are saying online. It is the hormones that your brain is sending out to try to protect you in terms of, okay, well, let's make you want more food. Let's make you crave more food. Let's make you do less stuff. Let's make you stress more. Let's make you not sleep properly. And then when you don't sleep properly, that makes you more insulin resistant, which then has its own cascade of things. Like, just as the body functions as a unit and you can't separate its parts, you can't separate the parts of your body from each other either. Everything impacts each other. And that is what Brandon and I are here to provide you, so that you have some stuff put onto your map. I want you to wipe your map clean. Keep the thing, actually, no, I would say question the landmarks on your map that you want to keep, that you believe fundamentally to be true. Question those. Actually make sure that they deserve a place on the map. Everything else, we're going to try to provide you some terrain. We're going to give you some places to look. We're going to challenge each other with some perspectives so that you can get all different dimensions of it. Because the way that our ADHD brains work is we can pull like little different divergent branches of everything and bring it all back to the one, so that it makes sense to you, so that you can stop believing the bullshit just because someone says they're a PhD, and have clarity on where you're heading and where you want to go. So if someone is coming to you, they're looking at this TFGU roadmap and this, well, I already spoke about the Ruby Recomp roadmap. With your roadmap, what is the first part, not the first part, but what is the first GPS narrator talking that you are going to say for people to come out of the garage door with at least the first mile to drive ahead?
That's a discover point A. Like, I think a lot of people have the wrong idea of where they are. They're very frequently not. So many of my clients come as former athletes. Oh, I used to bench this. I used to squat that. It's like, okay, well, that was 30 years ago. Where are you today? That's where we need to start. We can't start where you were, and we can't start with where you want to be. We have to start where you are. So discovering point A is, if I tell you, if you're asking for directions to get from San Angelo to Dallas, I can give you accurate directions. But if you're actually in San Antonio when you ask for these directions, they're not going to get you to Dallas, and you're going to be very confused. And this is the issue that most people that I speak with run into, is they think they're in one place, but they're really in another. Well, I've been working out for years. You've been doing something for years. You've been working out. Yes. Have you been training this way for years? Because if you have, then you'll have the results from training this way. You'll have the results from eating this way. Have you been following simplicity and mastering the basics for years, or have you been chasing complexity and leaving very large gaps in the foundation of your training and your nutrition? That's really that's number one. Discover point A, and let's fill in those foundational gaps. And that differs for most people. I would say that, there are some glaring parts that stick out with almost everybody, but for the most part, it is a person by person basis for us, at least, because everybody has different gaps. But I'd say most people don't get enough protein. Most people don't sleep enough, and most people think that they need to run from carbs. And I mean, by the time you look at the end of the list of their elimination diet, the only thing that's left on there is like water. And even then, I don't know, that he's out.
Even water. There was a video that I saw someone just debunk the other day. Even water is a hoax. It is dissolving your cells. You just look at water and it just dissolves. That is what it's doing to your cells. Water is not good for you. I don't know whether you saw that.
No, but one is do a fitness media fast. Stop scrolling Instagram for a little bit. Look at our stuff. But if you're pick one person to listen to, not 20. There was a time that knowledge was power. There was a time that more information was better. That time is past. What is important now is filters. And what we get paid for is having very, very good filters that we've developed over decades of practice. We can read all the books, and I've certainly read many books that I would now consider a waste of my time, that at the time I thought were, everything important. But the reality was I developed better filters. And after revisiting them with better filters, I learned, I should have spent that time on my filters. So anyway, that's what a coach is for. That's what you need if you're online. If you're gonna be online, you need to have some very good filters. I think I mentioned mine in a previous podcast. If I didn't, I will eventually. But
We'll talk about that for sure.
yeah, pick one person to listen to and make it someone who has a high degree of success. Call me biased. I would suggest one of us. Or in that case, you can listen to two people. I'll allow it. But yeah, do a fast and stop taking in so much damn information and overwhelming yourself with, oh, but this, oh, but that. The confusion and overwhelm and burnout that it produces isn't productive and it's not helping you. I'm going to come back to bodybuilders for a moment. You'll look at their plates and you will often see the same thing every time for the most part. Like 80% of those meals look exactly the same, no matter which competitor you're looking at, no matter what level they're at. There's something to notice there. There's a pattern there. That's a kind of universal principle. And when you look at the training, especially of the really good bodybuilders, they're not doing big fancy stuff. They're not doing fancy moves. They're building their foundation on the basics. They just are, especially the good ones. You know, get really good at the basics and remember the Pareto principle, because 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort. You can cut out a lot of BS. And you'll probably do better with less than with more.
I absolutely love that. I feel like that is the initial step. It's first figure out where you actually know. The first would be first put on your filters, because it's hard to really get a good gauge of where you are now when you're still too busy with your eyes directed everywhere. And then get a really clear audit of where you are now, and only look to where you've been in the past if it's to get a better perception of where it is you are now and how you ended up there. And then leave it be. Keep the lessons, leave it there, because focusing on where you are now with the past in mind, instead of focusing on where you are the next second, the next minute, with the future in mind, is only doing you a disservice. And with that, if you're in the San Angelo area, you know where to find TGFU, because it'll be down below. And if you're in the online space and you are looking for some guidance, you will find us both here, both down below in the description, both feeding you really good advice. And I hope that this here is a great start to the rest of the journey that's to come.
Yes. Bye. Thank you.
Love yous.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.